Thanks for the promotion, whoever did that.
Oh, me too. I was just hanging out wondering where it was. So I got out and joined again, and then I got this promotion. That's an increase in pay, right?
You both are doing excellent work. So congratulations on your promotion.
Oh,
Is there a
yeah.
different way to enter in, or is it just has to, that has
I think
to
that's how it goes.
happen? Okay.
I used a different address. I never know which one to use, so. But anyway, glad I got in.
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah,
we do now. You guys were on mute for a while, but that's perfect right there.
And we have Eric in the room as well.
I thought that was Eric. It's hard. It's like the face is like tiny, but well, that's great. So we have quorum. We have quorum. We have everybody and quorum at the same time. How about that?
Oh,
So,
although I have to go get a writing implement. I'll be right back.
all righty. Nick, while we're waiting, is Marie joining in the room, or is she joining remotely, or?
She will be here right now.
Okay. Making the grand entrance.
It's perfect timing.
All right, so we are all set in here. So I'll call to order this meeting of the Airport Commission at 4:04 p.m. on June 22nd. The first item we have on the agenda is the agenda itself. I have a proposed amendment. Marie has to leave a little early today, so I'd like to, I don't know how this works numerically, but item 7, we'd like to move up between item 4.02 and item 5.01. So I don't know quite how you renumber that because it's not technically part of the consent agenda. But basically, we're going to move the financial package to be between the consent agenda and the action items.
Okay,
With that modification, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I move approval of the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. That carries. Item 3 is the public forum. I don't see, oh, wait, do we have somebody in the public? No, I don't see anyone. And Nick, no one there, obviously. Okay, so we'll close public forum. Item 4 is the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve the contents of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on the consent agenda?
Can I just add one little comment there?
Absolutely, Nick.
Yeah, I just want to point out 2 things as part of the employment report. One, we're not up to our employments pre-2019, but we're getting there. And I think the chart and some of the data is starting to show that. Last month, I presented the summer schedule, which is our 12-year highest, our highest year in 12 years for capacity leaving Burlington. So I think this summer is going to be very strong. So look at the next upcoming consent agendas for employments to see hopefully the match of seats departing and passengers departing. And then the second item is our parking garage. You can see in February and April, they exceeded we had a very close capacity to 100% inside of our parking garage. Some of those days and weeks also exceeded revenue numbers from 2019. So really good stories happening all over the place as we continue our recovery beyond the pandemic.
Great. Nick, on the garage utilization, can we change the scale on that chart so we can see where it actually peaked? It looks like it's a fixed cap at 80%, which is great that we've never had this problem before, I guess, but we can see how that go up to 90 or whatever. Well, actually, what is the percentage in April? Do you know?
I don't, but it's high 80s.
Okay, great. Yeah, so if we can change that to 90, that would be great.
I would describe it as off the charts.
Off the charts. It is literally off the charts.
And he wants to keep it that way, Tim. So don't
You can
mess.
just say it's 80 something. You don't have to be specific.
So I had 2 items, one on the minutes correction. Under the action items, my last name is spelled wrong. So just to note that. And then I had a question on the employment information related to the, on the first page, on the carriers, whatever we're calling that section, the percentages of the, on the, I guess the right-hand column, the year over year from FY, year to date 2021 to 2022, the percentages are going down. And I'm guessing that's okay because that means we're getting larger aircraft coming in. And so the number of passengers is obviously not changing, but the number of actual planes that are coming in is decreasing, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, that's correct. So and the definitions are down there too for the number of seats between the definition between air carrier and air taxi. I do want to look at that a little bit closer too, even though this comes from the FAA system. Sure. Because we are seeing, we're close to 90,000 operations, and that might be at the end of calendar year 21. But I want to look at that because we're at a peak of operations, but not necessarily commercial operations. A lot of that is contributed to the general aviation, although even on this is a negative number. But we'll dive into that a little bit closer to make sure that that's correct, because we are seeing an increase in the total number of operations.
Right, okay, great, thank you.
Any other discussion on the consent agenda?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the consent agenda as presented with the amendment, with this suggested change from Eric on the changing of the spelling of his name. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, and that carries as well. So now comes the inserted number 7 financial package from Marie.
Thank you, Tim. So we're coming up to this month of June is the end of our fiscal year, just for those who may know and those who may not know, but we are July 1st to June 30th fiscal year. The financial package that you have in front of you is for through the results through April for the revenues and the expenses, and the cash, and of course what we are owed by the FAA is available through May 31st. I did draw down under the Carissa grant money. I did draw down to cover I drew down $369,000. And that was to cover specifically some April expenditures that we had. We did know timing wise, when we created the budget, we had some projects specifically that were going to be happening later in the year that were sort of done intentionally, and that's just when we knew they would happen, and we're seeing those things come to fruition right now. So we have several larger projects, and that was the reason that I did draw down some money. That was the first time all year that we draw down any of the stimulus money to cover our operating expenses. Our year-to-date revenues through April were $17.8 million. So that means that our operating revenues year-to-date compared to the prior year are $9.2 million higher. So just to show that we continue to see very strong employments. They are have recovered quicker than we thought that they would, and we're very happy about that. So we're seeing that coming through in all the revenues, which I show in the chart below. You can see just that we're really anticipating and doing pretty well as far as the revenues go. Our expenses, they are higher than they were a year ago, but they're very much on par to what we had 2 years ago. So 2 years ago, of course, that's when we started this in the March of 2020 with the pandemic, but we really had spent already and had things in process. So this is a very normal year as far as our expenses, and we had anticipated that as well. Our cash for the year, we had about almost $3 million in our checking account, our airport checking account, and we were owed about $4 million from the FAA. And that charted, we have one grant in particular is very large, AIP 118, that we are processing and getting ready to close out. That's the biggest receivable that we have on that receivable package. So those are the highlights. We did refinance our 2012 bonds. We had an opportunity, we talked about this many months ago. We thought we were going to be selling these the beginning of April. That was the intention. That was what we couldn't sell them before April because we're refunding. We can only do it up to 90 days prior to the call date. These bonds were callable on July 1st. So what happened is we had some fluctuation and some unfavorable interest rate changes that were occurring from when we started this last fall and it really got going by December to when we would have been able to close. It was sort of like, just timing is everything in the bond market. And we want to make sure that we have the best interest of the airport. It's a choice to refund. We're not going to refund unless we're going to have some cost savings. And so we did end up, things got a little favorable. It was watched by the folks at our financial investors and everybody that was on the team. And they said, we can go ahead and do this. We are thinking that it's very favorable to do this. And we saved about $170,000 all in, all costs paid to process this bond refinancing. So we're happy to come out of that and be able to save some monies. And our total amount of bond proceeds that it's sold at a premium, so the total amount of bond proceeds that we owe is actually less than what we were refinancing, which is always an interesting thing. So I just wanted to mention that because I thought that was a significant, important event that happened here. We're still closing on it, but that just happened. The numbers are set. And with that, I will entertain any and all questions.
Marie, can you talk a little bit about how you sort of measure recovery? So it looks like you're looking at, on the revenue side, you're looking at year-to-date revenue for this, is that a calendar year? April? Or
That's our fiscal year.
Fiscal year, okay.
So that is, are you looking at the chart on the write-up, Jeff?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, so you're looking at 10 months. Each one of those line items is showing 10 months of revenue out of our fiscal year.
All right, I guess my question is around, so you're, in terms of percent of recovery, you're comparing it to FY20, is that right?
Correct.
Now FY20 though had a big chunk of it, or not, like March, April, May, June, right? That was heavily COVID impacted.
Right, we really started to see you're absolutely right. And so next month, I may need to add another column on there. It's just gonna get a little busy, or just compare it entirely to fiscal. Maybe I'll skip 20 and compare it just to 19.
That's what I was thinking might be a better comparison.
Because you're absolutely right. April was the first month we really saw, still had people flying in March, but some people started to cancel, but we still had good solid revenues in March. And it was really by the time we got to April, which was just everything, just sort of the bottom fell out. So it begins to skew those percents a little bit. They probably, for the same period for year to date, April of 2019, those numbers would have looked very comparative, just to let you know. We were actually having a better year 2020 up through March. We had stronger revenues in the garage with stronger car rental concession revenues. So, it's hard to have apples to apples.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, I just want to make sure.
I'll do that next month. Very good point. Thank you.
Just a quickie in terms of the car rentals, is that revenue up, continues to be up in part because it's still much more expensive to rent a car? I mean, I don't know what it costs because I haven't rented a car in a while.
Yes, I don't know what it costs either, as far as whether their supply is if they have as many cars available to rent as they did prior. I suspect they're not quite back up to fully, but I actually don't know today. I don't know if you know if they have as many cars available or if they don't. I suspect they're getting closer and closer to having the number of cars available. I also suspect, knowing earlier this year, I was hearing that, prices were higher. They were charging more because supply and demand. I don't know how much that is. Do you have any sense?
Yeah, unless you have the actual numbers for price or average price of a rental car, I would say it's 100% higher than it used to be. No different than an airline ticket. Like Marie said, supply and demand. During the peak of COVID, we saw our airline tickets and probably our car rental prices decrease to try to sell those tickets, to try to get more people. Right now, our airline tickets, and without supporting data, I would say our car rental prices have increased more than an average year, more than probably the 10-year average.
And another follow-up, just the national news is talking about people making a reservation for a car rental and then getting to their vacation destination spot and there aren't enough cars. Do you know if BTV has had the same experience? Or are we pretty much, I mean, I don't know how much information or detail that the car renters provide you? I was just curious if that's an issue.
It is not an issue unless we have diversion flights or things that are unexpected in a mass capacity. But we are back to a full garage as well as full
Okay.
queuing area at the QTA, as well as the auxiliary lots are full during delivery days, which are Mondays and Thursdays.
Okay, good to know. I got some kids flying in, so good, thanks.
There is an overflow of vehicles for one-way return, so they are having to truck them up to Burlington that I am aware of to meet demand, but they are managing their fleet capacity stellar. We have not had anything come up our end of that.
Good, okay, thank you.
Marie, just a quick question for you on the drawdown on the grant. What is just help me understand the logic of drawing that down versus, using the $2 million that we have in the bank account? What do you sort of have like a trigger point at which that's what makes you want to draw on the grant versus using the funds we have?
I do, and specifically, I drew down on one grant, which is our AIP 118 is what we refer to it here. That's the grant number. It's Taxiway Golf Phase 2. Taxiway Golf Phase 2 is done, but we were waiting on some final cost bills and other things, which now we're going to be able to do a closeout on that. But it can take the FAA, it can, especially on, it's a large grant, it can take them a few months to reimburse us on that. So if we have, I borrowed I think $2.6 million, I think I say it in here, under the GAN this year, for that grant. Because that's my trigger point. My trigger, I've got a lot of money out there that I've already paid for, and I don't want to carry that out of the and the best part about this is we can get reimbursed under our PFCs. This is the interest on that GAN, the grant.
Oh, okay.
Is actually eligible for reimbursement under the PFC. So we include those sorts of things in our application, and so it nets. We might pay it initially, but then we can get reimbursed for it.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that wrinkle. That's a good one to know. Thank you.
I'll just add too on the drawdown of the grant between Larry and Marie, the sheer complexity of closing this one specific grant is greater than probably any grant we've experienced. We started, we stopped, COVID hit, there's contractual issues, there's pricing issues, there's change orders that all happen during the course of that construction season. So closing this particular grant out, especially with the final payment of that $2.6 million, was extremely complex, which on our side, reviewing that and reviewing that and submitting to the FAA was challenging just for the closeout. And I'm sure it's going to be just as challenging to close that out on the FAA side, which could extend that time frame for reimbursement that Marie was talking about. So this one was definitely a needed drawdown on again.
Okay. Great. Any other questions for Marie? All right, so we'll move on to action items 5.01, the budget neutral amendment to the fiscal 22 airport budget. That's yours, Marie.
That's me. So you have before you a request. We're doing sort of some year-end stuff, but the biggest part of this is I'm actually amending the two grants here. One is a reimbursable agreement for $47,799, and another one is taxiway K construction. I'm amending that. Those are both the offsets for those. We're going to have revenues on those things. We are anticipating grants. We've been told we're getting grants. We're actually going. That taxiway K is forthcoming any day now. But we had an opportunity to get started on that. Construction is going because of our year and the way that we have a window to do construction here at the airport and timing and flow with the taxiway and everything else. We're spending that faster on that particular, the construction is proceeding quicker than we anticipated when I put the budget together earlier in November. So that is why I'm coming forth with an amendment to that, because we're actually doing the construction work. And the other stuff is just here and there, I have some accounts that are needing a few more dollars. And so that is what you see before you. The other accounts are just sort of year-end stuff where I need a little bit more money. And then to offset the operating expenditures that you see on there, I'm doing that with parking fees, because our parking fees, what we budgeted, we are way above that as far as our revenues go. So that was just sort of an offset. Anybody have any questions specific to this?
Do I hear a motion to approve? Actually, you should have done this up front, but do we hear a motion to recommend to the Board of Finance and City Council the approval of this budget amendment?
So moved.
Second.
Eric, do you have any discussion?
No.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next up is item 5.02, airline lease extension. Do I have a motion on this?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Nick, are you taking this one?
Yeah, I'll give just a quick background on it. So this of course is our airline lease and use agreement with most of our airlines that operate out of the airport. This includes American, United, Delta, and JetBlue Airlines, which is what we call it, signatory airlines. We had a 5-year extension, we had a 5-year contract which ended in June of 2021. We extended that during the pandemic for a 1-year lease extension, which brings us to June of 2022. What we're asking for now is another 1-year extension on that very same contract with those same airlines, same terms. Although there's a couple of tweaks that we're asking for, mostly related to the bonds. No bond payments associated with the next year. And this will just give us the time that we need to truly negotiate a 5-year lease extension. We've had a few conversations with the airlines, including Frontier Airlines, which originally didn't sign this contract a couple of years ago. They are very amenable to a 5-year extension of this particular lease. We have a lot of work to do associated with the bond payments, changes in the pandemic, the federal stimulus funding, and all of that related to how rates and charges are calculated through this lease mechanism. So what we're asking for is just to extend this time frame. I don't foresee that we're going to actually use this entire 1-year lease extension before we're settled on the official 5-year lease agreement. But it's a good method for us to make sure that we're not coming back to you before the end of the calendar year for another, let's say if we did a 3 or 6 month extension. So this is just a quick extension on the airline lease. Conversations are going extremely well, but we do have some more work to do, which of course we're not going to settle by June 30th.
Thank you, Nick. Commissioners, any questions for Nick?
Yeah, I just for clarification, the 1-year extension would run from, what are the dates again?
July 1st, so just a couple of days
Of this year.
Okay.
To
June 30th.
Got it, okay.
And Nick, remind me it's probably easier to do the list of non-signatories. So who are our non-signatory carriers at this time?
So right now, only Frontier is our non-signatory until item 5.04. When that's approved, then Sun Country will be a non-signatory airline as well. And what that really means is pretty much the contract is identical. There is a premium payment on top of that. They pay 125% of the rates and charges, although these new airlines have a 3-year waiver period as well associated with our marketing and total waiver of new airline service. Frontier actually is just finishing their waiver period, which is another reason that they want to be part of the conversations to be a signatory airline, so they don't have to pay that premium. But right now, just Frontier and Sun Country.
Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor of recommending the extension, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Next up is item 5.03. Do we hear a motion to recommend approval of the Passero renovation contract?
So moved.
Any second on that?
Second that.
All right. I'm not sure. Is this Nick or Larry on this one?
I'll start and then fill in, Larry. So I think we've been talking to you about this project for a little while now, associated with the opening of our new terminal building. The next step is to renovate the existing north concourse, so the opposite end of the airport, because once TSA relocates out of that particular area, it's going to give us a whole nother section of the airport to renovate and to open up to public passenger space. This contract is going to do just that. That's why it's the design services, the bidding services, the engineering support services, to remove the escalators, to change the floor plan, to remove some of the glass in the north concourse and open up that area to larger seating capacity, which we desperately need in that area, specifically at Gate 8, which is United Airlines, their mainline aircraft, sometimes close to 200 passengers on a single plane are waiting in that particular area as an additional 200 passengers crosses paths with them. So it is desperately needed of some upgrades, and that's what this contract is going to do for us. Design. And then this is going to design and bid those services.
Apply for a grant upon receiving this.
That's probably the most important point. So this will take us to the design bidding contract, which will eventually lead us to a grant application for the FAA to see reimbursement of the approximate $2 million project. This right now, the engineer's estimates is about $2 million. This is part of our bill funding. So the $4 million annual budget that the FAA awarded specifically Burlington Airport, or appropriated to Burlington Airport, this is the next step to actually get the grant awarded to us, approximately $2 million. We'll know more once we bid it out, though.
Thank you, commissioners. Any further discussion on this?
So if I understand correctly, once this is completed, then the grant will be basically issued, or we will receive the grant for the.
We have to go in for a grant with a project already bid with real construction.
Right.
Okay, so we will take those bid numbers. The next day, hopefully, I'll have the grant ready to apply for reimbursement of this design and the construction of those improvements.
Right, okay, so is there if we don't receive the grant, is there funding allocated for this, or it just doesn't happen?
Yeah, that's a great question, and something that we talk about a lot, because like Larry said, for every single one of our grants, we have to have bids in.
Right, exactly.
Which usually costs around 10% of the project cost, which is why this is around $150,000. So it is somewhat of a risk depending on where that federal funds come from.
Yep.
And those buckets of funds come from entitled funds, discretionary funds, which are higher risk. We might not see those grant funds, or in this case, bill funds, which are already appropriated and approved to Burlington Airport.
Got it.
So there's very little risk associated with this project. I wouldn't say there's not any risk associated with it, but
Right, okay. But so generally, would it be fair to say that the grant funds are there for us? They just need the final design documents to issue us the funds.
I think that's a fair statement.
Okay.
And the FAA, through many conversations, is very aware of this project and already kind of checking off the boxes to preliminarily award the grant.
They made us update our CIP to include what we saw coming from the bill.
Sure, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great question.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's item 503. And last action item 5.04, the Sun Country non-signatory lease. This is a request to grant Nick the ability to execute this agreement with Sun Country. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Nick, you want to lead the discussion on this one?
Yeah, very similar to the one-year extension conversation. And also very exciting that an airline so early in their process is eager to sign even a which is counterintuitive, they're eager to sign a non-signatory agreement. But they have reached out. Shelby has done a great job managing that process with Sun Country, and really shows the commitment that they have with the Burlington Airport. I'll just say too that we had an excellent opening ceremony, if you will, with Commissioner George, as well as one of the vice presidents of Sun Country Airline. Shelby and I were on the inaugural flight last Thursday, and it was a really fun and great media presence for that particular day. And that's what this request does, is really solidifies our relationship with Sun Country already.
Thank you, Nick. Commissioners, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's item 504. Item 6.01, construction update. Larry, this is yours.
All right, I presented my update to you. Tim, I got your message recently with regard to some improvements you'd like to have made. I will make sure that happens next time. Helen, with respect to the question you asked last meeting about the cemetery fence, we did receive the administrative amendment. It's posted downstairs for its period. And when that runs out, we'll apply for the zoning permit, which should be issued quickly, I hope. And then we can figure out how we move forward with that. So that said, if there are any questions on the report, I'll be glad to answer them. I did add at the back some of the other things I do with respect to projects, smaller projects that are AIP, like replacing the 2 maintenance garage roofs, with total rehabilitation of the yard, the maintenance yard on the air side of the maintenance building. And also, if you're driving on Wilson Road and Airport Drive, you'll see we're improving the access, what we call the gateway project to the airport with regard to landscaping a new granite, Vermont granite wall on the corner there. And the other thing, I'm busy right now responding to questions for the 7 grants we've applied for and getting ready to apply for 2 more grants. So if there are any questions, I can answer them with that.
We have what's the planned opening for the terminal integration?
Do you want me to do this, Nick, or you want to? Okay, well, the plan has always been October. The contractor is a month ahead of schedule. However, there are some TSA equipment starts arriving, the new TSA screen equipment starts being received July 5th or July 6th. However, there's some camera issues with the TSA. Okay, so however, we should be on track for October at the worst case scenario. So.
Okay.
Yeah, on track for that October deadline, like Larry said, a couple of weeks ahead of schedule. My hope is to really have a soft opening around mid-September, which we can invite some of our stakeholders and some of the media to explore the building. And then really it may be an overnight opening, meaning TSA finishes some of their equipment install and opens the building. We're going through some of the phasing plans right now on how to best phase and deactivate the old checkpoints without causing too much of a concern with the traveling public. There might be a little bit of pain in there, but then it's going to be fully opened before October.
Will there be overlap in the beginning? Like, will all sort of 3 be open at the same time, or is that not?
Potentially, we're looking at possibly shutting down kind of 1 lane at a time. So then there's 4 lanes total in the existing checkpoint, so 1 lane at a time, adding them into the new system, and then trying to rotate things. It really comes down to the installation of the new TSA equipment, which is being delivered next week, like Larry said, but also deactivating the old equipment, which they still need to put some of that old equipment into the new building. So it is a challenging phased approach. There has been ideas to shut down 1 lane at a time, open 1 lane, so we might have 3 checkpoints open, or make that quick overnight switch, at least with 1 checkpoint at a time. So we're still going through some of those final logistics of the phase.
And ultimately, when it's implemented, will we need less TSA staffing than we do now with the 2 different locations, or is it comparable?
I would say it's comparable. There's going to be a 5th lane potentially added in this system. There's higher technology that they do not use in today's checkpoint, which really is a remote technology. Even though it's in the same building, it's in a different side room that might require additional staff. But everything that we're hearing from the federal security director is probably a comparable amount of TSA staff. The good part is when there is less staff, they can still operate that single checkpoint more efficiently than the geographic challenges that they have, or the physical challenges that they have today with the distance between the 2.
Okay. And are we considering, is Clear ever going to come here, or is that only for much larger airports?
It depends on Clear is an interesting concession, I'll say. Airports use them literally as a concession agreement and have some revenue sources from Clear to activate. TSA is maybe not so much in favor of Clear because it does add some logistical issues to it. We have talked to Clear in the past. We've talked to other private security companies in the past as well, because the federal law does not say that you have to have Transportation Security Administration personnel. You always have a federal security director managing it. And we've looked at that process as well, but it's a cost. So we've tried to kind of analyze the efficiencies, the revenue sources associated with alternative security programs. Right now, I don't think it would be a good option for us, but I could see some almost like a pre-check company coming in similar to Clear, maybe in the future.
Thank you. Sorry if I wandered a little bit off the main topic there.
That was a good question.
Yeah. And well, if you haven't seen it, please, I'd be happy to give you a tour. It is very close. The downstairs is carpeted. The ceiling is up. Like Larry said, the equipment is literally being delivered next week for the TSA portion of the building. Escalators are almost in, although we've had some delays with them. And the building looks really, really fantastic. Some furniture is going to be arriving hopefully in the next month or 2, and it looks spectacular. And I can't wait for it to be. I think everybody can't wait for it to open up. It's really going to change the dynamics of the airport.
I have a question about item 12 on here, the noise monitoring equipment. And mostly because I look at this every day in my office window, I don't know if there's any need to be repaired to the Winooski
We're fixing it.
facility.
Yeah.
And if there's any cost associated with what that looks like, since this is listed as basically you're closing out that process.
We've asked, but yeah, that might be separate, or depends where we are with the grant stuff, but we haven't received the price, but we're getting the price to fix that.
Okay.
Someone ran and put a warning sign.
Yeah, it'll definitely be outside of the cost of this
Okay.
closeout.
Yeah.
Right? So as we install this only certain elements of the project were eligible for reimbursement. Right. Operating costs, repair, and all of that is not eligible for the future. And we're also going to be putting a phone number on there as well, so people, because we don't see it every day.
Yeah.
You probably see that monitor much more frequently.
Absolutely. But there's no issues with the functionality of it? Okay, great.
Yeah, that bottom portion is a battery, or I think it was.
Yeah, and just go online and.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, any further discussion on construction update? All right, that concludes item 6. So we jump to item 8, noise monitoring program. Hannah, you're up first, item 8.01.
So the noise monitoring system has been online for about a year now. So over the past year, we've had 313 comments submitted. Again, it's cumulative, so in the past month, there's only been 25 additional ones. Those have actually been mainly under the unknown category, which just means typically that they didn't submit a response for that. But we've included the aircraft type and the noise comments separated by or percentage of town, by the town. Excuse me.
We'll do that. Dates.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nick, I didn't catch what you said.
But just addressing one of your comments there, Tim, of making sure that the time range or the dates are added to those.
Okay.
Those charts.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any questions or observations on 8.01? All right, next is 8.02, the map of homes in the noise program.
Somebody at the beach? He goes.
I
Oh,
know,
you can hear
yeah.
that? Oh, boy.
Well, I'll be
There's
honest.
like 4 seagulls flying, or I'm not at the beach, but this is not a beach, as you can tell.
So I did, we did just add the updated map, which we received today of the noise implementation plan.
Which we're calling phase 1 after the pilot.
And I'll share it just for the benefit of everybody online. It is attached to board docs though as well. So what this shows, we're going to add one more element to it, which I'll get to in a second. So the orange item or the orange parcels are designed and are being prepared for construction. Those are the houses that we just signed agreements with recently. The green houses, which is approximately 50 houses, or is
54, which we'll approach.
54, which we are approaching now and going through the process of the next steps of the program. And what we're going to add, because Tim actually asked a really great question at one of our pre-planning meetings, is we're going to add the airport-owned parcels to this map. So it's not a confusing item, meaning why are we starting all the way out at the blue line for noise mitigation of houses? Well, the answer really is, well, most of these parcels in here, there's no longer a house that actually sits on those parcels. So we'll identify that as well so that you can clearly see where we're actually starting in the neighborhoods. And then we'll keep adding to this map. We'll start adding the Ruski map, the Williston map, and the Burlington map as we start moving into those municipalities.
So the green are individual homes, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then you're going to add in potentially another color, the properties that the airport owns where there is no longer a house.
Correct.
Is that what you just said?
That's correct.
Okay, good. I think that's a great addition.
And then we'll, in the future, we'll add another color because we're going to be adding another 50 houses before these are completed. So
Sure.
you'll start seeing that progression of outreach, design, and construction based on the phase of where they are in the implementation plan itself.
So the phase one properties, it looks like are all in South Burlington, the next 50 under phase one.
Right, it falls under the decimal line, is why we're at that line right now. We've done sound acoustical testing, and we don't have to do any more within that level area. So that's what we're hitting first,
So these have already, all the acoustical testing has been done.
we did testing, and we're required not to do any more within that blue line.
Yeah,
So
Got it, right,
So what we
okay.
did was we only sampled the houses in that blue, within that blue line, closer to the airport.
Okay,
Which is no houses in Lease.
right, and that was gonna be my next question,
Yeah.
so,
And,
yeah,
and that sample, the FAA says any house greater than that blue line is eligible for notice
Okay.
citation without additional acoustical testing.
okay,
So that's why the next 50 are right in there. Then we're going to be jumping into the implementation plan language, which is ratio
right.
between every municipality based on the number of eligible dwelling units.
And remind me again the timeframe on that?
So right now, the ones in orange, we'll be starting construction by fall, okay?
Okay,
For 15, 9 plus 6, 15. We are starting design, we anticipate a grant any day now for the design for the 54, which gives us a total of 60. And we anticipate applying for a grant upon the design being finished before May 1 of next year for the next grant cycle.
And these numbers are always going to be shifting around. Larry just mentioned 15 houses that were part of this pilot program. Now it's 54 houses that we're doing some outreach on for the next phase, which really is related to generally the costs of these bids coming in.
right,
Much higher, of course, just like many other construction project, much higher than we were anticipating originally. So we're just shifting things around to make sure that those 4, instead of 50, we originally were shooting for 50. Those 4 were supposed to be in the original project, so just shifting things around, make sure we accommodate the costs.
So the grant that you'll apply for next May 23rd will be a pretty big one, and it will be for all the remaining 54 houses. But it will be phased in. It'll be like a 5-year plan or something.
No, we will apply, well, obviously, we have to bid just like we do any project. We're getting the design in advance here of those 54 homes, which FAA typically doesn't do. We will bid that. Once we have those numbers, we will apply for a grant for the 54 for next year. I think they were, initially we were targeting $5 million a year, which we thought was going to get us 100 homes. As we work down the path. Oh, you got it? Okay.
And this is where it's tricky, these first couple of years, because like Larry said, the green parcels, we are waiting for the grant to come right now to finish the design and go out to bid. Then next year, or when we get that piece of information, we'll apply for the construction portion of the green parcels, plus the design of the next 50 or so houses. And that way we're always revolving with a grant of constructing and designing the next year's projects every single year from now on.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further discussion on this 8.02? I just want to say thank you for putting the map together. I know that this has been a work in process, but I think this is tremendous. And as we expand this to our other communities, this is going to be really informative for people to see what the airport is doing. So this is great. Thank you.
I appreciate it also. Thank you.
That concludes 802. Item 9, commissioner items. Anything from commissioners today? Item 10, director's report. Nick.
So I have 5 items listed here, and I'll try to cruise through these and of course stop me if there's any questions. The first one is a memorial or a site or memorial site for our late Commissioner Jeff Munger. I've worked with the team on trying to place a particular thoughtful site of a memorial of some sort, as well as with Tim. And I think on top of our parking garage in our garden, up on the rooftop garden, we do have some really beautiful granite benches up there already, as well as some picnic tables that many of our employees and guests use often. I'd like to propose purchasing a new bench up in one of the corners, which really overlooks the airport, with a nice note on the back of that bench remembering Jeff Munger. And I just wanted to present that. I don't have any materials, costs, or pictures to show, but just a general thought to open up a conversation. And of course, hear thoughts from you if there are any different thoughts. But I think that would be a great site for that location. It doesn't have to be today, of course, either. Air service updates. Shelby and I have
Nick, just quickly, I think that's a great idea. I appreciate that you guys are thinking about that, and certainly support it as an appropriate way to honor Jeff and all that he contributed to the airport.
Excellent, perfect. And we're going to try to we're going to reach out to the family and make sure they're part of the process, and we'll certainly bring back updated information as the time goes on. Excellent. Air service updates. Shelby and I had a very long week last week. We were on the road just about all week in flying through many airports, seeing some airports, not seeing a couple because we were literally running from gate to gate, and ending up in Reno, Nevada at one of the largest air service development conferences in the country, which is held annually. There are approximately 170 airports at that conference, with dozens and dozens of airlines, some of the biggest airlines that you're aware of, and some smaller airlines such as Southern Airways Express and JSX Airlines, which I am going to bet that you've never heard of. So it was a very intriguing update to the airline industry. We heard from the Vice President of Southwest Airlines, who made a fantastic presentation on some of the challenges that they're still experiencing. Right now, fuel is a big one, and pilot shortages is, although we've been talking about it for many years, it is now exacerbated by the pandemic and some of the issues that have been going on with flight training and the pool of pilots. The last couple of days of the conference, however, were one-on-one meetings that Shelby and I and our consultant from Volair met with 8 different airlines presenting additional opportunities out of the Burlington market. We have a very strong case for many new airlines, or many new routes, some new airlines, and upgauging or incorporating larger aircraft to the destinations that we serve today. So very good meetings, lots of things on the horizon. I don't foresee any massive changes in the next year, maybe the next year or two. However, there were some new airlines that were interested in Burlington, which not prepared yet on what that might look like, but new airlines really intrigued by our market and what they could offer, especially within the Northeast region. Boston was a major part of those conversations, a direct flight to Boston that we'll continue to advocate for as the market allows.
Nick, what's the status of Boutique? Are they operating now or no?
They originally advertised as a seasonal service to Boston. However, they are no longer here. They did take away all of their equipment. We are working with them to try to bring them back next season. Although there are other very similar airlines about as big as Boutique that continue to be interested in that same route, the Boston once a day flight. This really does have to do with pilot shortages. So airlines like Boutique, which are training those single engine turboprop pilots, are being picked up really fast by regional carriers to fly twin engine smaller aircraft. And those regional airline pilots are being picked up by the mainline carriers. So it's a constant flow upwards faster than it's ever been before. And the smaller boutique size airlines, they can't pull enough pilots from schools and flight training programs across the country fast enough because they're being picked up by other jet carriers. I think we're going to see that issue, which is a good thing that pilots are able to explore higher opportunities quicker, but it also is a challenging thing for small hub airports like ourselves that need some of that lower seating
It was a
capacity.
success, you would say? I mean, like in terms of loads and capacity, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I would say it was massively successful, even despite some of the load factors. One of the things that we were never able to capture was data from Burlington to Boston, driving data and flying data. We know how many people drive to Boston to fly out of Boston, but that number that Boutique was able to provide for us, even if they had maybe a 50 or 60% day on a load factor, was really powerful for us to start incorporating into presentations to new airlines or other airlines, saying, this is what we really need. We need a Boston flight. And here's why, and here's also how an airline was successful just recently providing that. What we heard from Boutique though was numbers were really good, revenue was really good, the pilot shortage really hurt them, and ground handler employees, quantity of ground handler employees also was a challenging aspect for them. But I would say it was incredibly successful, and generally we saw high 80-90% load factors. Granted, that was on an 8-seat aircraft, so the majority of the seats were generally full.
Yeah, great, thank you.
I'll just say the last thing for air service was the successful launch of Minneapolis flight, like I mentioned before. Great press conference, and Delta is also has started their service to Minneapolis as well. So we're now flying to Minneapolis 5 times a week. So that really is a new route, generally a new route. We're advocating for Sun Country to operate year round. Right now it is just a seasonal service as well as Delta Airlines. We're advocating already to operate year round. Generally takes more than a year for them to make that decision. However, the numbers, even on that first flight, were very high. Coming inbound, we were at 130 people from Minneapolis to Burlington, and over 100 people going back to Minneapolis on day number 1 of about 160, 170 passenger plane. Marie is actually on that flight tomorrow and Sunday. So Thursdays and Sundays, Sun Country. You have the agenda open for that.
The maintenance facilities project.
Perfect. So the next update is what will be potentially our next big non-terminal project out on the airfield. I've just recapping a little bit, this does have to do with the rezoning process, the rezoning request, the land up in our northwest quadrant of the airport, and the true need of exploring a new maintenance facility at the airport. It's very similar to the $2 million project for the North Concourse renovation. In fact, same funding pool. We are exploring using that pool over the next couple of years to build a new maintenance facility, which is why it's a different conversation when we first presented the rezoning to the end of the rezoning. We now have the funding to actually accomplish this project over the next couple of years. I've asked the team to start exploring consultants to help design and prepare us for a bid of that project probably next year, because we desperately need a slightly larger and much more efficient facility. And we can accomplish that without the rezoning being finalized. I've met with city councilors of South Burlington. I've met with many of the community members that were part of the conversations of the rezoning. And we really do have a great conversation happening right now between those multiple parties to accomplish some of the things that the neighbors were requesting and asking about during that rezoning process, while also fulfilling the needs of the airport to make sure that we're safe, we have the equipment stored, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of great momentum is being put forward on this particular project, which does include the neighbors, and I'm pretty excited about it. That was a challenging process, and I think something good came out of it, where we're exploring some really great relationships, making sure that we're growing our relationship in the neighborhood as well as our maintenance department. We already went through a bunch of the terminal projects, the North Concourse renovations. I generally keep that on because there's so many elements happening with the terminal. There are small things happening in the terminal too that are visually exciting. We're undergoing a full repainting project. So many areas of our terminal are being updated with new paint, new colors, some new some new visual aspects of the airport. And during this North Concourse renovation project, the contract that you just approved tonight, we're also exploring some concession shifts within the North Concourse. That does include expanding the footprint of where Skinny Pancake is right now. I've met with the owner, Benji Adler, as well as his leadership team to really look at what does Skinny Pancake need and what opportunities are they and the airport missing out on. One of the biggest challenges I see is a full terminal, 60% of our passengers using the North Concourse, and not enough seats to sell that cold beer or a nice meal before a flight. And that's revenue for both entities that really should be available to our passengers. So they're looking at expanding that that facility up on the North Concourse. Hudson News, as well, as we explore some shifts in what the North Concourse looks like, is going to be looking at expanding and investing back into the Burlington Airport on the North Concourse to potentially expand their footprint, as well as I have asked them to relocate where their actual store is, just on the North Concourse. That is all part of the design elements and process of the bid that, or the contract that you approved tonight. And there's going to be many more conversations associated with that, specifically with Skinny Pancake and Hudson News that we'll bring back to you. The final update is the hotel. We are going through the final pieces of the permitting of the hotel project. Larry, Dave, Shelby all went through our initial, maybe let's call it groundbreaking, of digging in the ground for the hotel. Don't take that out of context. That was just doing borings of that particular area. But that's still exciting because it's starting that process of building that hotel. Probably in the July meeting, I will be bringing a revision to the contract that we have approved a couple of years ago with the hotel, because there are shifts in the finance folks and shifts in the way that the hotel project is being, the shift in the business elements of the project from the awarded vendor, which is DEW Corporation. Our contract is actually with a company called BTV Hotel LLC, and that shift in leadership from DEW and the hotel management company, that's what I'm going to be bringing forward to amend the contract in the future. Doesn't change the size of the hotel, the aesthetic feel of the hotel. It's still right now a proposed Marriott or Fairfield Inn by Marriott. And it really is just a shift in some of the business names associated with that agreement. That'll most likely come in July, and we're really hoping to see true shovels in the ground potentially later this year, but possibly late fall, which will be a large project up on the north side of our parking garage. And when I bring that back, I'll readdress everything, give you the full background, give you some of the 3D images so that that it's all refreshed as well. That is all I have for today.
Any questions or comments for Nick?
Just a comment, I'm really happy to hear that one of the outcomes of that rezoning discussion were some improved relationships and conversations going forward about how to meet some of the needs, I guess, or demands of the community next to the airport, and I appreciate your efforts.
Excellent. And it's not a short-term project, right? The relationship really, we do have to look at that as a long-term conversation that's going to keep going on, because we're going to have new projects on the horizon, and we want to make sure that we're incorporating the community and our users, of course.
All right. Thank you, Nick. That's item 10. Item 11 is follow-up items.
Okay. So 1101, orientation conducted by airport staff on public right to know. This was an item added by Tim George.
Yes, and we will wait until we have our commission fully stocked with commissioners, and then we will conduct the public right to know. But my understanding, Nick, is we're all set to go on that. We're just waiting to have our commission be full. So
yeah, the city attorney's office is ready when we are. They're a little slightly short-staffed right now too, but they are very prepared to present in front of a full commission when you're ready.
Perfect. Thank you.
And the second follow-up item, 11.02, airport staff to present analysis of types of incidents involving police at the airport. And Nick is actually going to pull up a document that we've added
today. So we've been working on this for a little while with the police department. Dave and I met with Chief Murad a couple of times over the last couple of weeks, really making sure that we're in tune with the conversations and the media attention that's happening downtown, but also making sure that our obligations here at the airport are fulfilled, which is great. This particular, as I bring it up, this 3-week time frame in 2021, so this is August of 2021, this was specifically looked at by the police sergeant at the time for incidents here at the airport. And I think the question really here was, what type of incidents do police respond to here at the airport? You can see that the gray and the orange are mostly related to airfield gate alarms. The brown should be regular gate. Yep. The orange and the brown are gate alarms, both out on our airfield as well as inside of our terminal building. Just to add some more context to that, there is a requirement in our airport security plan to respond within a very specific amount of time to those particular gates. I'm not going to get too much into the details of our security plan, but that's essentially what is required and what those brown and orange elements are. The gray element there is an ambassador assist incident, which generally consists, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joey, consists of helping ambassadors out on the curb. Yeah. And that could mean anybody from a challenging interaction with a passenger, or a passenger, more likely than not, a passenger waiting too long at the curb, which again, we have some federal obligations to adhere to on those particular instances. But you can see too that there's random incidents. Remember, this is just a 3-week time period. There's random incidents that occur in a very large physical and geographic area at the airport. Those 59 incidents of airfield gate alarms not only does the police respond to it, but also Dave's team responds to some of those elements, and they could be 3/4 of a mile away from where the police station is right now, or on the other side of our airfield, as well as perimeter checks and routine elements that are associated with our airport security plan.
Well, just the fact that majority of them are responding to those alarms. I think the majority of them is in the terminal. And that's things like, somebody doesn't use the badge properly. They have to physically respond to that location to see what happened, to make sure that there's no breach. So.
Does any of this seem out of the ordinary, what you're seeing for residents?
It's very, very typical.
Okay.
Yeah. One thing I will add to this, and we don't have updated information right now, but I will add that very similar to what may be, headlining in the news, we've seen a fair uptick in transient population at the airport, both inside of our terminal as well as encampments around the airport. And that's some elements that we might respond to as an operations department, as the Burlington Police Department. South Burlington Police Department has helped respond to many of those situations. And I would say many of those are mental health guests here that really need, they might not have a violent element to it or an aggressive element, but really need the next element of help. So we've also partnered with the Howard Center and some other folks that can really help guide these folks around here. We've had some notices of trespass over the last couple of months, but I want to make it very clear too, and I made it clear to the staff that especially in the winter time, I'm not interested in trespassing anybody, because it could be a very tricky situation unless there's a violent element to it, which occasionally I would say very rarely we would have to respond to. But other than that, I would agree with Dave. The typical response is responding to alarms, responding to our CCTV camera system, helping the public, and then alarms all over the place, every single one of our doors. Essentially, you are definitely watched on camera here at the airport, and that is for federal requirements, but also for safety requirements all across the board.
Is there a reason those specific dates were chosen to analyze, being from 2021?
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, if that's the most recent data, if there's anything more current.
Yeah, no particular reason other than the fact that when we first received this request, that was about the time. So it has been a little while before presenting it. We've had some shifts in the sergeant position here at the airport, and it's very difficult without manually recording some of these particular incidents. Apparently, it's difficult to receive or pull out some of that data response, because not all of this is entered into, I think it's called Concourse or something like that. It's not all entered into the police system that they use. So this was a special request to record that particular.
I think you did it, this week. It looked very similar to that right there.
Yeah.
It is great.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Are the police asked to support TSA on occasion? And would that show, is that built in here somewhere that just isn't readily apparent, or is it just didn't happen during that stretch?
Yeah, it may not have happened in that stretch. So I think adding the typical routine of an officer here is an important part of the duties of an officer. And one of those duties is to be present at the TSA security checkpoint during very specific periods of time. And that's an important presence that is needed for a security element, but also a requirement of the TSA agency to be present. present at those security checkpoints. It's not really incorporated in there. It very well could be that there was no specific incident that was recorded, but we have had incidents of unattended bags, which usually and sometimes do come from TSA agents or what is the FAA called, unruly passengers that TSA has asked for assistance both on an aircraft or inside the actual security checkpoint itself. Not many of those here at the airport, probably less than the national average, but nevertheless, unfortunately, we've had a few of them.
It may be covered under agency assist. I know in Winooski, the police data that I see, they report any assistance to another agency, whether it be another department or other outside group. They list it just as agency assist.
Yeah, that's a good point, and it's, yeah, that's a great point. And there's a lot of agencies that come in and out of the airport, federal agencies that BP is active.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, well, thank you, Nick, for, I know this was quite the slog to get this done, but I do appreciate it. I did have a question on the 59 is the orange is, that's the airfield gate alarm, right?
Yeah, that is not roof leaking.
Right. Well, that's
Yes.
What are some of the incidents that, I mean, I guess I want to understand what airfield gate alarm means, because that's like 3 a day, basically. It seems like a lot.
Yeah, what happens on occasion is that a gate will not shut, or something will happen where it'll bounce a little bit and cause an alarm. Vast majority of it are false alarms, but we still have to investigate those alarms to make sure everything is, there's no breach of security. So it's precautionary in nature.
Okay, so most of those aren't real penetration. It's a false alarm issue.
Correct, the vast majority.
Yeah. Okay, great, thank you. Well, I think this is interesting data. I mean, if you do the math, it's roughly 10 incidents a day. So it does show the importance of having a presence at the airport. So, all right. Any other comments on this slide? All right. Any new follow-up items to add from this meeting? Okay, that closes that. Thank you, Hannah, for leading that section. Next up is item 12, adjournment. Do we hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll move adjournment.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Okay, good meeting,
thanks,
Tim.
everybody.
Thank you.
All right, see.